Hello, good morning, good afternoon, happy weekend, whenever and wherever you're listening from today. This is the Punt Pals podcast. My name is Robbie Vaughn. This is Nick Ristovic. Hello, g'day, mate. How are you?
Going very well, thanks, great man. Reporting in from Melbourne this week over the home of footy, so very much looking forward to today's show.
It's very much a rock star show today. You're over in Melbourne, living your best life. I've just been on the golf course with my father-in-law, with the most horrid round of golf I've ever played in my life. I stopped scoring at about hole 5, to be fair. But yeah, mate, we're both out of the studio today. Hey, mate, I've lost you there.
I'm trying to call me halfway through.
So Nico is that busy. He's got the boys waiting for him at the bar in Melbourne, I think.
Nah, mate, just trying to be one of the people, man of the people over here in Melbourne, mate. You know how it is.
How's it going, mate? What's cracking when you're over there?
It's been great. Been at the wagering conference this week over in Melbourne, seeing what all the other big players are doing in Sportsbet and Ladbrokes, and hearing about all the new exciting innovations in racing and sports. So, from a punting perspective, plenty of exciting technological advances in the wagering space, and there's going to be plenty of great promotions coming up over the next 12 months, and plenty that you and I'll probably get stuck into ourselves, mate.
Hello, more opportunities for us to win. Is that what you're telling me, Nick?
Mate, I've planted a few seeds there and trying to get us a few ripping specials across the line. And interestingly, mate, got a bit of flack actually at the conference after my Jeremy Ugle-Hagan call last week on the podcast. A few of the sports bet guys started getting stuck into me. My nickname's been Jezza all week, mate, so it's going to be hard to shake that one.
They've been listening in.
Yeah, a few of the guys tuning in over there, I think. So we're taking punt pals to the East Coast clearly at the moment. It's good fun.
Ah, you beauty. I was looking at the download numbers the other day, and I did notice they'd spiked, so that explains it. Thanks, Sportsbet crew.
Yeah, we might have to stuff up a few names more often, mate. Get a few more listeners.
100%. Oh, on the subject of that, you can catch us on TikTok and Instagram. We usually put our videos up there. Also, make sure you stream us on the what do we got? The Apple Podcast app, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you stream your potties. As we rip into another episode, mate. This is episode 14. So, last week's bets. How did we go? Shit house by the looks of it. Yeah, let's go through yours
Yeah,
first.
mate, it's absolute strip out in the old-fashioned term with racing. Absolute strip out. So I
Yeah.
took the NFL multi on with Locko Collins, and mate, he was desperately unlucky in his first tip for the potty. He only fell one leg short there, and it was the shortest leg home in the NFL multi. So the Bengals couldn't get it done against the Patriots at home, and yeah, no luck with that one, unfortunately. And then I wish I win. I wish it did win because I did my cash on that one. It was over 1,000 meters, probably too short for the horse in the end there in the Moir Stakes. Really finished home strongly and probably looking for 1,200. So no good there, mate. As encouraging as the run was, I'll be on next start. Mornington Glory was too good in that race, obviously, and stepped up in grade to get the win. And then Shorty, mate. Unfortunately, D Short, we couldn't get one up with him either. Port were absolutely woeful, as we spoke about earlier in the week in the potty, weren't they, mate?
Mm. Pretty much anything to do with Port was a bust this week. They were terrible, terrible, as we discussed in episode 13. So that they killed us in a few multis, unfortunately, Nick. So I don't know if I'm going to be on them this week at all.
Nah, mate. They probably stuffed up a couple of your bets last week, I think, did they?
Oh, they did. So I had the tipsters pick, which was a tab touch special. It was Libba to get 25 plus. Darcy and Cholder combined for 4. So that was probably the only footy bet for me that didn't involve Port. That lost, of course. It was $5 odds from a $4 boost. 20 on it, man. It was terrible. But I had a multi of Port, Hawthorn, Swans, and Lions to get the job done. That was paying $7.16. Had 20 on it. That would have been a beautiful little win. Had Shorty's tip as well, another one involving Port. And I had Tone's AFL tip, which also had Port in the multi, and there was $20 on each of them. So
Oh,
absolute bust for me in the footy on the weekend, Nico.
yeah, it was tough going, mate. I think you and probably myself and many others probably suffered with Port getting belted by 80 plus points at home. I think yeah, one of those results you didn't expect, obviously. And yeah, Geelong, mate, just got the job done and killed a lot of multis, didn't they, really, in the end?
They did. So you and I got nothing. We had absolutely no luck whatsoever. Tone's hot finals footy tip. That didn't come up as well because he had Port and the Western Bulldogs. He got Jesse Hogan for
Mm.
3+ and Sam Walsh for 30+. I don't actually know if that got up or not, but it doesn't matter because all the other leagues were no good except for Jesse Hogan. Locko Collins, as you mentioned, no fun there for us. And Liam McLaughlin, he had a stinker as well. He had Arcadia Park in race 4. He had deferred in race 5, and he had River Rubicon in the Swan Draft Family Stakes. Nothing. So no one. None of us won a bet.
Nah, nah, mate. I reckon probably my longest sort of punting memory. I can't remember a weekend where more short price favourites went down across the country in racing. I think the bookmakers would have had an absolute field day, mate. They'd be sipping Chardonnay on a Sunday night, thanking their lucky stars that many roughies won. So hopefully it doesn't. The trend doesn't continue because there's some good racing coming up again this weekend when a few more tips will push out, mate.
Oh, there certainly is. And we're going to get into Belmont very soon. But first, let's have a look at the AFL for this weekend because there's 2 games, only 2, which usually would hurt. Like, because I always hate buy rounds. But when we're talking finals footy, it's exciting stuff. And we're starting off Friday night with Port Adelaide paying 231 versus Hawthorn 159.
Who would have thought, mate? Port it's being almost $2.50 at home, and Hawthorn being short price favourites, and they've continued to firm as well, mate. It's unbelievable. Like they're $1.65, I think, during the week, Hawthorn, and they've continued to firm. So yeah, it looks like a one-way contest, but you never know with Port. They could pull anything out the bag, couldn't they? They were woeful last week. They might be good this week. Who knows?
I saw a very good stat that apparently the last 12 teams who have lost a qualifying final by 50 points or more have gone on the next week to win. So that actually counts in Port's favour. I mean, you feel like it's such a long shot to put any money on them, but history says they could actually get up and win this week, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, it does, and I guess wouldn't want to argue against Hawthorn's form, but again, you just think experience, more seasoned veterans playing for Port, back against the wall, playing at home. Sure, they can't put 2 absolute stinkers in a row. I think it'll be a competitive game. I still wouldn't, to your point, be too confident in having punts on the head-to-head result in this game, even though Port probably overs at 230 there. But I'm probably thinking the Hawks, really.
Some interesting points in this game as well. I mean, Jack Ginnivan, he's been a bit cheeky during the week with his little post on Jack Heaney's, his comment on Jack Heaney's post saying, see you in a couple of weeks' time. Is that going to add a little bit of spice to the match? Because I would have thought the power would be sitting there reading that and going, mate, you're going to cop it this week. You are not going to have an easy time of it. And we actually want to show you young fellas how it's done. So we'll put a bit of spice into the match with that comment.
Oh, I think they have to. I think Ken Hingley will use it as good motivation for the boys there. I think Hawthorn have that sort of showbiz kind of style anyway, don't they? They're pretty loose on the socials and they like to sort of get up and crow a little bit when they're flying. So just the way they play and I guess the way they celebrate the individuals within the team and yeah, Ginnivan obviously had a couple of pints, I think, the night before the game last week and was there watching some racing, I think. So he's an interesting character, isn't he? I think you might have called Isaac Heaney Jack there too. You might have caught my disease from last week, mate, with Jeremy.
Oh, did I call him Jack Heaney?
Jack Heaney, yeah.
All right, we're
Oh,
one
Jacko.
all. You get the first serve next week.
Yes, you beauty. I thought you were stitching me up, mate, just trying to take the piss out of me from last week.
No, I'm just a dumbass. I've learnt that over the years. Bit of trivia for you for this week, mate. I've got a question for you. So, who's
Yep.
kicked the most career goals? Jack Gunston or the man Luke Bruce, who's playing his 300th game this week? Any
Mm.
ideas?
Well, I'd probably say for longevity of career, you'd probably go Bruce. Gunston's kicked some big bags, but I think over the duration, I'm probably more a Brewsterman.
Ooh, ding. Correct. Very well
Correct.
done,
Oh, I thought I
Luke
was off.
Bruce. No, you're on.
Nice, nice.
548 he's kicked, whereas Gunston's kicked 439. So 2 very good mid-sized forwards for a long time there for the Hawks, aren't they?
unreal, and they're still obviously still having an impact as well. I thought Gunson was sort of written off last year after his year in Brisbane, and he's come on, kicked a few really clutch goals the last few weeks, and Bruce is coming on as a sub. So amazing that they're still there from those premiership years, and they might be there again this year if they go all the way. Unbelievable.
100%. And Jack Gunston actually features in my best bet this week as well. I've got him for 2+ goals at $1.90. I had a look at his record over the last 3 weeks to a month, and I think it was the last 3 weeks. I don't have the stats in front of me, and I put them together last week, so I've forgotten exactly, but I think it was 5, 3, and 4 goals or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So he's got form at the moment, and I reckon he's very good for 2+ while all the fanfares around Bruce.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Culture Deers added a bit of depth down there too, so he probably helps take a bit of pressure off from some of those key backs for Port. So yeah, I think they're vulnerable down back Port. I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, Gunson 2 goals looks a good shout, mate.
Yeah, nice. Any best bets from you this week there, Nico?
Yeah, I'm going with the Wizard, mate. I was about to rip out the old Harry Potter Wizard hat for this potty. I was that excited after last week. I refrained from doing so,
You
but I
love
think
him,
he's
don't you?
probably
He's
a.
been your man all year.
Oh, I do love him. I was a bit harsh on him earlier with his goal kicking, and I think he's turned it right around. So he's taking the feedback on board, and he was amazing last week. I think I've got him for 2+ goals. I thought those three small forwards for Hawthorn last week combining for 10 goals was just an emphatic effort. He's actually kicked 3+ in the Hawks' last 3 matches away against Port. So I think that's a telling stat. And yeah, also like John Newcomb 30+ at $3.35. When I was looking at the odds through that disposal market, I thought that seems well overs. He racked up, I think, 11 or 12 and a quarter last week. So he's got gears. But generally speaking, I mean, the game's interesting. Zach Butters returns after bruising his ribs last week. Todd Marshall finally looks like he's going to get a recall, and Charlie Dixon will go out there, which made a lot more sense to me last week. I'm not sure why they didn't pull the trigger on that. And then Ryan Burton, who was really important for Port last week, he misses off half back. And when you look at Houston missing, you look at Ryan Burton missing, and you look at the Hawks forwards that are flying at the moment, you think, geez, suddenly they look very vulnerable down back Port. And I think that could be where the game's won for the Hawks.
The question is, how do they turn it around? I mean, they were absolutely embarrassed last week. We said it last week that on paper they've got such a sensational midfield that they can't be as bad as they played last weekend. So hopefully they can actually do something this week. I don't know what it's going to be, but they need to turn
Yeah.
this around, and they need to at least not disgrace themselves, because it's been talked about a lot in the media, but Ken Hinkley's job is probably on the line if they don't, well, if not win, put in a really, really good effort. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. And also with Hawthorn, as you said, unbelievable. Like at the start of the year, I'm reiterating a few comments from our pod last week. No one was picking them from the finals. If you can find me one person who picked the Hawks to make the finals, I will give you $1 million Tab Touch voucher.
Oh, mate, everyone wrote them off. They were 0-5, as we know, to start the year, the Hawks. And yeah, everyone was writing them off. Everyone was writing Ken Hinkley off. And then you look at these two teams and the story now that's around this game. And to your point, mate, like both teams have had just a crazy turnaround, really. And yeah, a shock to be where they are at, given where they were at in the first 5 rounds. So there's been a couple of other stories too, obviously, around Ken Hinkley. Obviously being under some severe pressure. He did actually mention that Ryan Burton wasn't carrying an ankle injury and was set to play the game. It was definitely a lock, and obviously 24 hours later they've come out and said that he does have an ankle injury and he's going to miss. So I think there's been a little bit of foxing going on there in the media landscape for Port, and that's probably a symptom of the pressure they're under, I guess, this week. And I think to your point, mate, if they're going to win the game, it's got to be in the midfield. They got belted by Dangerfield and Holmes last week, and as everyone knows, in that first half. And those senior players now, Rosie had a quiet game, Butters is off by half time. If they're going to win the game, they've got to get it out of the middle. And I think if they can lift their performance on last week and play that footy they played in the last 4 or 5 weeks going into this game, forgive that anomaly from last week, I think they're going to be competitive. But again, the Hawks midfield, they're an unknown. We don't know what the ceiling is with them yet. So it's just going to be a cracking game. I just can't wait, mate.
It really will be. As we move into Saturday's game as well, I just wanted to highlight that our best bets were very good last week. So this week we've got Jack Gunston for 2+ goals, the Wizard Watson 2+ goals as well at 215, and John Newcomb for 30+. So I think we're going to hone in on those this week rather than our usual multis because that's where we've had our success lately. So keep an eye on those.
Absolutely, mate. I think we both rued the fact we didn't load up on a few of those last week, or at least multi them together, because I think we would have found about $13, $14 of that multi last week. So if you did get on that, well done. We didn't. We won't make the same mistake 2 weeks in a row.
No, we will not. All right, let's have a look at Saturday night. This is going to be huge. The GWS Giants and the Brisbane Lions. Giants the favourite at this stage, $1.72. Lions 2.13 outsiders. It's going to be massive.
Yeah, it is. Again, I thought the Giants and Sydney was probably the two best teams going head to head last week. I'm very bullish on the Giants. Brisbane, inaccurate. Haven't seen them consistently play good footy and score at a really good clip in the last few weeks. So they're vulnerable, and the price at 2.13 obviously suggests the punters agree, I guess.
They're an interesting team, though, Brizzy, and on their day, they could easily dispose of the Giants. It's one of those things where you go, it's possible, but GWS's form last weekend was so good. It is hard to see it happening, but it's one of those finals where you never know what could actually happen, is my feelings.
Yeah, it's like the whole symptom of the whole season, really, isn't it, Robbie? I mean, most games have looked like they're a one-sided affair on paper, and then teams have bobbed up and caused massive upsets to the detriment of our multis, generally speaking, mate. So,
Yep.
yeah, this is another one of those games. As you said, Sydney. I mean, the question mark is tough game against Sydney, right down the buzzer last week. Brisbane have an easier clash. Does that play a role in the game? It's sort of circling around my sort of form around this game. But on quality, on paper, I think the GWS Giants and what they've been able to achieve and pushing Sydney right to the limit last week suggests that they are cherry ripe. And I think the odds are probably right there, mate, with the GWS being favourites at $1.72.
Yep. Who's the X Factor player, do you think? I feel as though Toby Green probably didn't have the greatest game last
Nah.
week. I mean, he was in that punch on with Tom Papley, which was great. But I reckon if he stands up, the GWS Giants get it done.
Yeah, I think you're right, mate. Good shout. He was very quiet last week. So if there's upside for the Giants, he's going to be the player that's probably going to add a few more goals to their score this week. I think for me, it's Tom Green in the middle. You know that Lockie
Mm.
Neal and McCluggage and Ashcroft were the key to Brisbane winning last week in the clearance game. So he's got to really lift, and they've got to match them in the midfield. And I think if they're to win, Tom Green's going to have a big game. And I think you've actually got him in your best bets, which is probably a great shout again, mate. As a good segue into it.
Yes, correct. So I've got him for 30+ this week, paying $1.90. And if you look at his last three games, 33, 37, and 40 possessions apiece. So he's got form. He's bloody good in these big games. And from what I've heard, he's a great preparer. Like he's great on preparation. He lives for the big games. And I think it's the sort of match where he's really going to stand up, Nico. So Tom Green, 30+ is my best bet. You got anything in the mix there?
Yeah, I thought that maybe if Brisbane will have a slight edge, I think it's probably down forward. I felt like they're probably going to be able to cover the bigger forwards of GWS quite well in terms of Brisbane's backmen. I think if they're to kick goals, I think the small forwards would be damaging. And Charlie Cameron's kicked two in his last five away matches against GWS. He loves playing against them. So I thought $2.20 was a
Oh,
good
good
price for him
stat.
for 2+ goals. And yeah, he hasn't been in the best of form, and I've been critical of him throughout the year. I just feel like those small forwards have been really damaging in the last couple of weeks in all finals. So I think if he's probably been there, he's had the experience. I'm putting the Moz on him potentially, but I think he should kick two, and the form line suggests he will at 2.20. I thought that was just too good to refuse.
Love that from you. Good shout as well. Charlie Cameron's been one of those guys all year where he's popped in and out of form. Like he was really down for a while, then he started ramping it up and he was kicking multiple goals in a game. So it would be very good to see him ramp things up. And I think you're right. He's going to be an X Factor player and a very good best bet from you there as well, mate. I've got a trivia question for you. You ready for a bit of trivia?
Hell yeah.
I don't know why my voice went really high in that trivia, but anyway, that's just a weird thing that's happened.
Just
Okay,
get excited,
so
mate.
who is the GWS games record holder?
Oh, I reckon. Well, it's got to be the guy that's still going around. And before I take my guess, this guy kicked one of the best goals last week. A check side banana outside of the right
Rip
boot, late in the game. It's got to be Callan Ward, doesn't it? The
the
inaugural, the
boom.
inaugural giant.
253 games.
Oh, what an effort! He's just a stalwart, isn't he? Such a good player still.
He is. It feels like he's been around forever. I remember when he was getting around for the Bulldogs. Jesus, that must have been like 2008 or something like that. So he's really kept his body well. It's surprising he's only played 253 games if you look at it that way. He must have had a few
Yeah.
years out with injury there at some point, did he?
Yeah, I think he's had a bit. He had a bit of a journey. I think with a couple of serious injuries where he missed big stretches of football. But what I do love about him while we're on him is he's just one of those players that doesn't panic. Yeah, he's tough in
Mm.
traffic. He wins a contested footy. Some of those deft handballs, and his ability to find space, sort of Pendlebury like in some ways, to put a big rap on him. He's just such a tough man to tackle. So strong through the core. And last week, his ability to break tackles, get those deft handballs out, and generate clearances for the Giants just shows why he's got so much class and why he's so important to that team. So those older players do have a really important role, I think, in these sorts of games. They just have that coolness and that experience to bring their team back down a level when things are getting probably a little bit out of hand. And I think you'd be really disappointed that they got overrun last week by Sydney in that game, and I think they would have learned a lot from that. And I'm expecting them to be a lot more prepared if that does go to that scenario again this weekend.
So as we wrap up the footy, tips for the weekend, I'm going to take, and this is a bit crazy, I'm going to go the outsiders, Port and Brisbane.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Hawks and I'm going to go with the Giants, mate. So we're going head to head this week.
Could we be any more opposite? The answer is no. But I don't know. I just feel as though there's been so many outsiders win this year, and you feel like the logical bet you take every time, but it hasn't been getting
Mm.
up this year. So I'm just saying, stuff it. Let's throw caution to the wind and go the outsiders.
Yeah, good odds there, mate, for two of them. You probably get, what, almost $5 there if you doubled those two.
Yeah, probably, and I'll probably do it. You know what? Why not? I love it. Throwing caution to the wind. Moving on to West Coast, mate. Being a WA based podcast, it is very interesting to know what's going on as far as the coach goes. Obviously, we've had Simo leave um, for a while there. We thought Schofield was probably going to take over. It doesn't feel that way now. Any updates?
Yeah, they've really ramped up the search. I guess you talked about it last week in the potty. While teams are still involved in the finals, there's an element of respect from West Coast and those pursuing senior positions to kind of let those teams play out and make sure they sort of have that free air to finish off the season. And that's what West Coast have probably been keen on doing. I think what you're seeing now is Don Pyke's really ramped up his efforts in narrowing down the list of coaches and potential coaches for West Coast. They're really keen on Stephen King from Geelong. Who's been
Oh,
around many successful systems for quite a few years. So he's really emerged in the last week or so, and also Brent Montgomery from the GWS. So two teams that are very much still in the finals mix, and I think that's why we probably haven't seen much out of West Coast in terms of them shortlisting or contacting these guys to try and see what their interest is in the role. So Dean Cox has emphatically said 3 times he's staying at the Swans. He still gets linked with the West Coast job, and then in terms of two smokies, mate, Andrew McQualter from Melbourne and Brendan Lade from the Bulldogs are the other two names that have been spruiked this week. But they reckon the next 4 weeks they'll be making a decision. So West Coast fans, you won't have to wait very long.
interesting. I can't wait to see which way they go, actually. For me, this is so enthralling. So we'll find out very soon, which is great. And, mate, you brought something to the table here that we haven't run with before. A bit of NBL news, a bit of basketball, Aussie basketball. What do you got for us, man?
Well, mate, I love my Aussie basketball. I cut my teeth as a sports administrator in my younger days at the Wildcats, and very soft spot for the man in red. And I think the NBL news this week, it's really been around the future stars. The league's had a resurgence in recent years through the Future Stars program. We've seen the likes of LaMelo Ball, Alex Sarr go high in the NBA draft and play a year here in Australia in the NBL. And it's probably become that second or third best league in the world. So at the moment, it's quite an attractive proposition for ex-NBA players and future NBA players. And this week, Adelaide 36ers have landed a big fish, mate. We've got a man who was playing for the Philly 76ers in 2023, did an ACL. In 2020, he was the best six man in the NBA. And this big guy, I tell you what, Montrezl Harrell is going to be playing for the 36ers. He signed a contract, and I can tell you what, their season ticket sales will go through the roof on the back of this news. So, yeah, great league, keeps going strength to strength, and we're going to have plenty of NBL news as the AFL finishes up and the basketball ramps up, mate.
I always found it funny with the NBL that when I lived on the eastern states, no one really seemed to care about it. But when I moved to WA, everyone went nuts for the Wildcats and they were packing
Yeah.
out stadiums every week, still doing it now, 15 years later. But I've definitely noticed that the league is growing and there seems to be interest all over Australia now, which I think is great to see. And as you said with the Future Leagues thing, it does seem like it's a real breeding ground and we're actually pushing some players through that end up in the NBA. And it's awesome, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, exactly right, mate. The NBL went through obviously a bit of a lull period. The Wildcats had the 90s where they won a few championships in a row in the heydays of basketball. I was sort of working there when we made the transition from Challenge Stadium to Perth Arena, and there was a lot of pressure around us filling out the stadium, and membership went through the roof. We had 10,000 season ticket holders. We won 2 championships in the 5 years I was there. They had 30 consecutive finals appearances, the Wildcats, which I think is a franchise record for basketball across the globe. So they're an enormous franchise. The Perth people love the sport. I think now being on ESPN alongside the NBA and the media rights has really ramped up the legitimacy of the league and the quality of basketball. If you haven't been to an NBL game and seen the product, it's not only great on court, but a 2 hour experience full of entertainment, dancing, competitions, prizes being shot out into the crowd. It's actually a fantastic spectacle. So I'll be there. I'll get my season ticket sorted and we'll head down for a few frothies down at Perth Arena there over the RAC Arena over the summer, mate.
Beautiful. And Hoops Fest is happening for round one of the season, which means that every single club is going to be in Perth to kick off the season. And they have like Sneakerland. And I had a interview with Leonard Copeland on my radio show about it. He's pretty cool, man. So I'm really excited about the start of the NBL season. And I've got to admit, it's not a sport that I've massively been into in the past as far as NBL. I don't mind the NBA. So it's cool. It's really cool.
Are you Melbourne United man, being an East Coaster, or are you soundly a Perth Wildcats enthusiast these days, mate?
Oh, soundly Perth Wildcats. I've been in WA about 15 years now, and as I said, no one gave a shit about the NPL back then. So I'm fully Wildcats. Don't worry about that.
You beauty, mate. You got. I got some red. I got some red for you. Where to the game? Don't worry, mate.
You beauty. Mate, I've got to say, on the weekend, I was loving watching the racing. Belmont was on,
Yeah.
Randwick was on, Mooney Valley was on. So there was heaps and heaps to bet on, which don't tell my wife about that. And there was just a lot of horses racing to watch, which is great. I know you're into it too. This is your wheelhouse, in fact. So Belmont this weekend, what's going on? Give us a bit of a preview.
Yeah, another great weekend of racing, mate. To your point, we talked about the end of Belmont, the start of Ascot. So the good horses are coming back, and the stakes races are back to back at the moment. We've got the Nicopolis Stakes, so I feel like this is a bit of a pun with myself. I feel like we've got a nice affiliation here with the Nicopolis Stakes, the Greek version of me, not the Serbian version. It's an intriguing race, mate. It's a sprint race over over 1,200. And yeah, a couple of interesting runners. Frigid, who's been a horse running in the East Coast, he comes back to WA after stacking up some reasonable form against a lot better horses over there in grade. And it gets Willie Pike on board. It's at minimum weights and it's at $3.10. And I think that's a sort of price where you see a horse that stacks up against better horses. It comes back, it has no weight on the back, and it gets probably the best jockey in WA in the saddle. It should stack up the form in this race, and $3.10 was a good price. I'd really like Frigid in the couple of stakes, and it's three wins from 4 starts at Belmont. The horse, it loves the track. It does bump into a couple of other really competitive horses. One in Man Crush, who likes to lead early, and I expect he'll probably take up the race and probably lead. And it'll be one of those races where they'll need the whole straight there at Belmont to probably run him over the top of him. But yeah, I think Pike will get a nice toe on the race, and I think he'll overrun Man Crush down the straight. And then also another horse in the race, Red 53, talking about the Wildcats. Of course,
Oh,
strong affiliation with Damien Martin. Um, and obviously trained by the Williams. He'll also, I think, be very prominent too. So my numbers are 2, 8, 11, and 12 for those playing exotics, and obviously really like their Frigid at 310. So that's the preview for Saturday at Belmont for the main race.
Love that. And Belmont's only got a few weeks left, eh? I did see on the website the other day that Ascot is coming back either the 5th or the 12th of October. It was one of the two that I read. So that feels early for Ascot this year. Is that the same time that it always crosses over? I always thought it was kind of like the end of October.
I think it might be around the same mark, mate, maybe within a week or two, to your point. But yeah, obviously, I guess there's a lot of good horses already coming back to Belmont. We love going to Belmont for a frothy, particularly in the footy zone. It's actually pretty good free entry for people
Yeah.
who want to head down there and see some racing and sink their teeth into a bit. And, you know, you can go to the track and watch, obviously, the other feature races in Melbourne and Sydney as well while you're down at the track. So as a punter, it's a pretty good day down there. And obviously, Flemington, mate, as well on Saturday. We've got a Group 1 again in the Maccabi Diva Stakes, which is going to be a pretty exciting race.
Beautiful. I have to admit, I haven't really looked at Melbourne and Sydney as yet. I'm going to be doing all my research over the next day or two. Have you gotten that far yet, or have you been too busy at the conference and haven't had a chance to
Oh, mate.
keep your eye on anything yet? Or are
Oh,
you
mate,
getting
you know
tips at the
me. I think,
conference?
oh, look, it's going to be some perks of working in the industry, I guess. Yeah, I mean, Melbourne's alive at the moment. You've got the two AFL finals on this weekend. There's people walking around in Hawthorn jumpers everywhere, and the racing enthusiasts at the conference. There's a lot of excitement around this race. I think we're seeing a horse called Via Sistina who has come to Australia and beaten all before her. She's probably one of the best horses going around Australia at the moment. She's $2.15 in the race. J Max on board for Chris Waller. It looks like it's going to be a race set up well for her. But then you look at the quality of the field. You've got 7 Group 1 winners racing in this race on Saturday in the Maccabi Stakes. You've got Mr. Brightside, Pride of Jenny, Pinstripe, who actually won the Memsie Stakes, as we know, a couple of weeks ago. It's just an epic race. There's been lots of chat from the punters from other wagering organisations saying that Pride of Jenny might be back. Had a bit of a mishap last week and is always better second up. But I think, mate, Via Sistina, Mr. Brightside, Pride of Jenny, and also a horse called a Tissue who actually really likes a race at Flemington, loves the track, are all good chances. So I'm taking a multiples of 1, 6, 7, and 8 in my numbers, and I'll probably have a box trifecta on the race, and hopefully for value, Via Sistina doesn't win at $2.15 because it'll be a pretty small payout. But just tune in. It's going to be an epic race, and I think, again, Pride of Jenny will lead early and try and find 4 or 5 lengths on them, and then I'll be chasing her down the straight there at Flemington for a Group 1 and a big prize money purse. So, yeah, you know me, mate. I love my racing, and this is going to be an absolute cracker.
That's a belter of a race. How many good horses in there as well? So I'll be taking some of your tips for that one, mate. And when
I
I do
hope
my
so, mate.
research tomorrow, I'll be taking all of them into consideration. That's for sure.
Let's hope so. If we win, mate, you owe me a few beers, all right?
Done. I probably owe you a few anyway, let's be honest. All right, man, you've got a roast, Aristo's roast. What's caught your eye this week?
Yeah, mate, it's an interstate version of the roast. Look, I think there's a lot of talk at this conference around the code war. So AFL, NRL, they both go head to head this time of year. The NRL's trying to find a leg up on the AFL and the track fans across the border. The AFL is doing the same thing. It's always been a bit of a loggerhead between the two codes. And I'll tell you what I've seen in the papers a lot over here the last week is just all of the absolute conjecture and controversy that surrounds the NRL all the time. And this week, another story has hit the media with a Canterbury Bulldogs star who was caught essentially testing positive to a drug roadside test. He's going to miss the elimination final for the Bulldogs. Josh Adokar is the player I'm referring to. Whilst he's maintaining his innocence, I think when you look at the history of the NRL and how much controversy surrounds these players in terms of sexual assault and domestic violence and drugs and positive drug tests, it's just a horrific, I think, brand image to try and set for younger players coming up through the ranks and kids out there that are aspiring to be NRL players. So there's a couple of things I want to unpack here, and it's a roast in a way, but there's just a couple of things that just don't make any sense to me around this whole story this week with Josh Adokar. He's tested positive. He said he's not actually taken any drugs. It's going to take an incredible 10 weeks for the second result to come back to prove his innocence or obviously discredit his claims of being innocent. 10 weeks to get a second positive test when the season's literally about to play out in the most important games of the year. I think that's an absolute disgrace. We saw a player earlier in the year that tested positive for drugs in a roadside as well, and he basically stood himself down for an entire month while they waited for the result. So I think in this day and age, surely there's some people out there that can run tests a little bit quicker than that, and we can get on with things, or we can get it out of the papers while the NRL final should be the focus, mate. So I wasn't happy with that.
Yes, well played.
And then I think second, we're in a society right now where domestic violence has become such a huge theme. I think it's a bit of a stain on our country when we see all these reports of domestic violence is so prevalent in our society. And I think when you look to leaders and people who have an important role in the community that people look up to, I think these sorts of things the NRL just has to clean up. Myself, the wider sporting community, we all had a gutful of hearing about this stuff. And when we should be celebrating finals again, more controversy in the paper, I wouldn't wash in the AFL. And I think the NRL need to have a good hard look at yourself and run some better education amongst the league. And if you don't do that, I think you're really sort of tarnishing your brand. So that's this week's spray about the NRL, mate.
Boom, love it. It wasn't as angry as usual. It was more just serious to the point. I liked it, Mika. Well played.
Serious messaging, mate. We couldn't be too jovial with it. It's not a great look, is it?
No, not at all. No, that said, with Heroes of the Week, first up, Josh Adokar. I'm
I
joking.
don't even.
I retract. I retract.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Yeah, no, he won't be making Heroes of the Week. This week, I just wanted to go straight into a guy that has pretty much clocked life, I reckon. He's played about 30
Mm.
AFL games. And do you know what? He's always showed a lot of promise. He's got the X factor. When he's on, he is on. But still, he's only played 30 games. And the Gold Coast Suns have said, you know what, mate? We're going to give you $12 million over 9 years. So I
Wow.
think Mac Andrews deserves to be a hero of the week because he's
Yes.
played 30 games of footy and he signed a $12 million contract by the sounds of it, or he's about to. So, I mean, you can't get any better than that. So, Mac Andrews, well done. You're an absolute hero.
Oh, that is a great shout, mate. I can't believe that sort of money. It's unheard of, isn't it? Unprecedented sort of levels of coin there. And I'm just imagining Mac Andrew just rolling in some kind of expensive Lamborghini, rooftop down, just dripping in bling. Yeah, what a superstar. And great they
100%.
tried to lock him away. Unbelievable.
But it's crazy stuff. And I mean, he is an X Factor player. He's very, very good. But 12 mil over 9 years, it's speculative. For the highest
It
AFL
is.
contract ever, it's speculative. Come on.
It,
Gold
it
Coast
is.
Suns, what are you doing?
I think it's more like I feel like it's an Adenui example of the marketability of Mac Andrew too, and what he brings in terms of his brand and his ability to play in multiple positions across the ground. It seems like a lot of money, but when you think about the Gold Coast and where they're at in their AFL kind of, I guess, tenure and where they're at with their brand, they need a big fish like that, I think, to bring crowds to the game. So
Mm.
I think it's a revenue play for them too, as much as it is an on-field play too, there, mate.
Let him get to 100 games to make sure he's got it in him, I would have thought. But good on him, good on him. And if you're right, then it's a very good play.
It sounds like a
uh,
roast of the Gold Coast team list manager.
I'm edging in on your territory here. Is this a hero or
Yeah,
roast?
you
We're
are,
not
mate.
sure.
I like it. I like
uh,
it.
Mate, the other hero wise, I just wanted to basically just give, do you know what? The Hawthorn boys a bit of a shout out. So the
Yeah,
two fellas that seem to be leading that team at the moment, the Wizard Watson and Jack Ginnifan, they are the spiritual leaders of the Hawthorn Footy Club now. They're a lot of fun to watch on the weekend, not just on the footy field, but in their interviews afterwards and all that sort of stuff. And although Jack Ginnifan is less annoying than when he was at Collingwood, he can still be a bit of a pest. But I like it because he's like Teflon. Nothing can get under his skin. It doesn't matter what he says or what he does or how much of a dickhead he looks. He still just keeps popping up and performing. And Jack Ginnivan, good on you, mate. I'm going to give you a hero of a week gong as well.
Yes, mate. No, I love that. I'm with you. I want to see more of it. I'm sick of the watered down kind of cookie cutter approach of AFL players having to be serious. And I think we see it in the NBA, and to your point, like I love the Showtime, mate. It brings crowds through the door. It's exciting footy, and regardless of what happens to them this weekend, I think they've overachieved well and beyond where most people thought the Hawks would be. And yeah, love that shout from you, mate. Great heroes of the week again.
Huge. And yeah, I think that wraps up Heroes of the Week. I just wanted to go footy this week, mate. Nothing else has really stood out to me overly. Like no big acts. There probably is something like one or two things I've missed, but do you know what? For me, it's just all about footy finals at the moment, and that's where
Exactly.
my head is at. Oh, the other one I'll throw in there. Did I put did I? No, I didn't. I'm going to put the two horses in that I absolutely love: Bella Nipotina and also Amelia's Jewel. We talked about them in Monday's
Yes.
podcast. Both epic runs to come second, and I think we're going to see both horses have wins very soon. So get them in the Heroes of the Week. Give them some confidence.
Yeah, mate. And we put some clips up there in the week of those two races if you haven't seen the performance of those two horses. So definitely jump on the socials at Punt Pals on Insta. And yeah, you've done a great job of cutting up those races, mate. And both very exciting to follow over the next few weeks.
100%. Which I think takes us into our bets for this week. Are we at that stage?
I think we are, mate. I think we're ready to rip into it. I think all the listeners out there will be keen to see where we're putting our dollars this week.
100%. All right. Do you want to kick off proceedings?
Why not, mate? I've the best bets team. I think exactly as we said, we can't deny putting them in this week as a bit of a multi play. So I've taken Watson for 2 goals and Cameron into 2 goals. The small forwards double, mate. $4.75, and I'm not just playing around with a 10 or a 20. I'm going 40 on it, mate. At $4.70. I like both of them. I think it's great odds for both. And if you're looking at around 480 at a $40 result there, it's, 150 odd dollars in profit. So I'm very keen on those two small forwards. And then my next play is at racing. I've got a real roughie here, which I sort of had a look at the speed map in this first race at Caulfield. And there's a horse that was really good in its first prep, then probably got a little bit toey, to be honest. When you've got a colt and it hasn't been gelded, we all know what happens, mate. You're sort of that young teenager out at Northbridge there, and you're getting a bit excited. So didn't fire a shot last prep. Has since been gelded. This horse. It's called She Light. In race one at Caulfield, it was at $20 this morning when I had a look, and $5.50 for the place. I think it's been gelded. It's had two great jump outs where it's won both of them. And whilst there's a few better horses in the race, I couldn't go past it to have a 10 each way on it. So 10 each way on She Light in race one at Caulfield is my second bet for the weekend. And then I've still got two more, mate. I'm spreading the cash a little bit. I've got Berkshire Breeze in race 5 at Flemington at 360. It's a Flemington
Yeah.
specialist. 4 starts there for 2 wins and a second. It loves the distance. It's 2 starts there for a win and a second. So it hasn't been out of the money there in 2 starts at the distance. And I think it'll be very, very competitive. And then last but not least, Shorty again. I'm going to stick with him, mate. He's got Hawks by 16 or more and Newcomb 25 at $4.50 boosted, which I think is a ridiculous price. And I'm having 20 on that. Damn, I feel
Hello.
for the
I
weekend.
love it from you. You were a bit light on your bets last week. I think you missed out on putting one in. So you've really just
Yeah.
come to the party this week and loaded
I
up. I
have.
like it.
I have, and you've done a great job of posting them too, mate. So if you weren't able to follow all those 4, we will try and get them up on the socials and there at Punt Pals at Insta, and you can get those numbers and those odds there to place your own bets.
Love that from you, mate. All right, so my bets for this week. I do have a Tab Touch special. Now, this is Josh Kelly and Harry Himmelberg to combine for 45 plus possessions. That in with
Mm.
Taylor. Caleb, Brett Daniels from the GWS. I'll get there eventually to kick one goal. $20 at $4. It was 275, but boosted to $4. I really like that bet because Josh Kelly, we know, is always good for 20 to 25. And Himmelberg, I think if you
Absolutely.
look at his last 5 hitouts, he's always got 20 plus. So I reckon they'll hit
Yep.
the mark there for the 45 combined possessions. And Brett Daniels, he's always good for a goal. So I think that's a nice little bet there. It should be a
Yeah.
returner, I think, Nick.
Yeah, I think so too, mate. You've got so you got $70 outlaid there. $20 outlaid there, and you've got one more as a multi-best bet, mate. We've done a similar thing here, I think, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah. So do you know what? I'm just going to load up this week. So I'm going to put 70 on this bad boy. It's just a multi of my
Yep.
best bets. So it's essentially Jack Gunston to kick 2 plus, and Tom
Mm-hmm.
Green to get 30 disposals. That's paying 310 on Tab Touch. So I'm just going to load up on it,
Lovely.
mate, because I'm quite confident in the best bets that we did last week. So why not?
Yeah, I love that. $200 return, mate, if you can get those two up. Well, that multi-bet up at least.
100%.
How good. Don't seem pretty safe, that double, so I'd like to play there too. I might have a little sneaky personal on that one too, buddy.
Nice. I love where you're going with that, mate. You've got Loco's NFL bet as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we have, mate, and I've had I've had a lot of feedback during the week around NFL. Like, it seems to be one of those sports where more and more punters are getting involved. So Lockie's actually done a great thing by us and put a bit more context around this week's four-legger that he's put together for $3.90. So those who
Love
love their
it.
NFL will get right into this. So he's got the San Fran 49ers to beat the Minnesota Vikings head to head. He's saying San Fran are continuing to look like one of the best teams without arguably the best running back still injured in Christian McCaffrey. So Vikings played
Yep.
solid, but are still semi-weak at quarterback with DeArnold, and he thinks the 49ers will expose them there. So San Fran to beat Minnesota, the first leg of his multi. The second one is the Chargers to beat the Carolina Panthers. So the Chargers' offensive line kept key elite Max Crosby sackless last week, meaning he was completely ineffective. With the time that they can give Justin Herbert at quarterback and the blocks needed to tandem running backs Dobbins and Edwards against one of the lesser teams in Carolina, he reckons this is an absolute shoo-in. So those NFL punters following
Hello.
will know exactly what that means. I'm still getting up to date with it, but he thinks this is an absolute banker. Number 3, Indianapolis Colts. He reckons they'll beat the Green Bay Packers. He said Anthony Richardson is a star in the making and picked up right where he left off before his season-ending injury last year. They'll be too dynamic, too good for Green Bay, who have little to really crow about. They've got Malik Willis at quarterback, so he's not a renowned quarterback there, and he thinks they'll be exposed. So Indianapolis Colts to beat Packers. And then last but not least, mate, the Kansas City Chiefs. Many would know them even if you don't follow NFL. He thinks they'll beat the Cincinnati Bengals. The Chiefs, they're the reigning champs, mate. They absolutely pumped a hot Ravens side last week. Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice are looking very, very fast, and the Bengals copped a big upset last week and definitely missed T. Higgins to make some attention away from Jamar Chase, who'd only been starting preseason days before round 1 due to his contract negotiations. So he expects the Bengals to come out and he expects the Chiefs to claw them back. So you got Chiefs to win, Colts to win, Chargers to win, and San Fran 49ers to win at $3.90. So those NFL lovers out there will be pretty stoked with that preview. Thanks, Lockie. That's bloody awesome, mate.
I love that from Lockie, how much detail he's put into the reasons he's betting on each game as well. So, I mean, you can't argue with that sort of deep dive. And I reckon I'll have a bit on that as well, just to get
Oh, you
behind
got to.
Lockie's
You
efforts.
just got to, mate. Don't, back in the punters. We love. That's what the show's all about.
100%. So the Tones hot tip hasn't made it in time. He does have it on the way. So I'm actually going to put that on the socials. So we'll do that probably on Friday afternoon. By the way, it is Thursday afternoon here when we're recording this. And mate, I think that wraps us up.
It does indeed, mate. Another great show. Pleasure to tune in, and let's hope we can get a few of these bets up. We'd love to sort of head into the AFL prelim and grand final weekends with some money in the account.
It'd be nice. Now, I'm going to make myself some dinner in a couple of minutes, but Nick is going rockstar. What are you doing tonight, mate? You going to Nobu, something hot and fancy, somewhere in Crown? What are you doing in Melbourne?
Mate, well, you couldn't go to Melbourne without going to the institution that's Chin Chin. So we're heading there for a little bit of tucker with the work crew here that are over for the conference, and then just going to tuck out and see a few of my old mates from Melbourne from a few years back and have a few frothies down there somewhere in Hyatt. So I'm going to enjoy myself flying back tomorrow. Look forward to catching up with you too, big fella. It'll be good.
Beautiful. What time's the limo pick you up?
I think I've just seen the notification come through then, mate. The Uber chopper's on the rooftop, so I've got to head off soon.
All right, mate. Well, you make sure you get home. I was going to say safe, but more like make sure you make your plane. I'm a bit worried about you after tonight's proceedings, and they sound like they're going to go down. Nick on the loose.
Mate, return to the old stomping ground in Melbourne. It's hard not to get caught up in it over here, to be honest. And I'll definitely be enjoying a few frothies tonight, mate, for sure.
Love it, love it. All right, mate. Well, you have a good one. We'll see you back here in Perth next week. And yeah, make sure you tune into the Punt Pals podcast, same time next week. See you later.
See you guys. See you, Robbie.